I'm here with Stephen Segal, an editor at Quirk Books, which publishes the Quirk classics, such as Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters. And they're also coming out with Night of the Living Trekkies. Hello, Stephen. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Great. So to start out with, can you just talk about how Quirk came up with the idea of the monster mashup?
Sure. You know, the editors at Quirk love new, odd, exciting, artistic stuff, and you know, they were all fans of things like the Danger Mouse remix of the Beatles' White Album and Jay-Z's Black Album, turning it into this new hybrid piece of music, incorporating the best of both worlds. And they started to play with the concept, and our associate publisher, Jason Rikulik, started making a list of great classics and odd things, and he was drawing lines between them on a piece of paper, seeing what caught his attention. And when he drew the line linking Pride and Prejudice and zombies, he stopped and he stared at it and he said, "I want to read this book." So he called up Seth Graham-Smith and said, "I want to read this book, please write it." And that's how it all started.
So, but why do you think Jane Austen and the supernatural seem to go so well together?
You know, I think there's a couple things there. One is that, you know, people who love genre fiction, you know, fantasy and horror and such, have a real tendency to be Anglophiles in the first place. You know, there's a lot of that classic storytelling tradition that's tied up in, you know, not only English authors, but English cultural background. So I think there's an automatic tendency in the one direction for zombie fans to be cool with a Regency England setting. And on the other hand, you know, I think the success wasn't even so much that they went well together as such, but that they went so wrongly together. You know, the exciting thing to me about, you know, the surprise of seeing Pride and Prejudice and Zombies on the shelf is the idea that the form and the content were so inseparably linked. You know, it's, as far as the actual story goes, you have zombies invading England. But the actual book is a case of new text about zombies invading Jane Austen's text. And just, that was so immediately, cohesively delicious in the most delightfully wrong ways that it was hard to resist.
Some other Quirk titles coming out. You have The Night of the Living Trekkies. Care to talk about the premise a little bit?
GulfCon is the largest Star Trek convention in the southwestern United States, and it is struck by a zombie plague. And at first it's very hard to tell because everyone's in costume in the first place. And as the reality of the situation begins to hit home, you know, our protagonists, who are all Star Trek fans to one degree or another, need to figure out how to survive, get through the crisis in front of them, and deal with the much larger crisis that they come to discover is threatening life on Earth itself.
Speaking about zombies and cons, do you find any unsettling parallels between, you know, con-goers that you see at Dragon Con here this weekend and the undead con-goers that you in the book?
Everyone involved with Night of the Living Trekkies is a lifelong diehard fan. You know, this book came about because we love conventions. There's so much Star Trek inside goodness in this book. I'm not sure how it could be anything other than a love letter to all that is Star Trek fandom and science fiction fandom in general. You know, the jokes are all good-natured.
If the zombie apocalypse were to happen right now, what would you do?
If a zombie apocalypse were to happen right now, I guess I would pull out my music and play one of the greatest songs ever All You Zombies by the Hooters. I'm Stephen Segal, editor at Quirk Books, publisher of the Quirk Classics line, including Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters, and the new upcoming Quirk release, Night of the Living Trekkies. Available at the Science Fiction Book Club, sfbc.com.